Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Boobies and Noobies. You can follow us at Boobies Podcast on both Instagram and Twitter. And if you'd like to support the podcast and get a little extra bonus Boobies content every month, you can support us on Patreon at Boobies Podcast. Welcome to Boobies and Noobies, the podcast that asks novice romance readers to think outside the dick in a box and brave the unbridled world of erotica. I'm your host, Kelly Reynolds, and today I'm joined by longtime friend and environmentalist, Amelia Remeta. Welcome to the show, Amelia.
Hello. Happy to be here.
Environmentalist. Oh, I mean, if that's not like Bay Area sexy, I don't know what is. Like, we're coming to you live from my parents' office in Alameda, California, where Amelia and I had the pleasure of growing up together.
Many a Christmas white elephant party.
Yes! Oh my God. Which we still to this day try and carry out every year. It's been many holiday parties. You usually rock some good pajamas, like matching pajama sets.
Matching flannel dog pajamas.
Yeah.
Still have them.
That's impressive. I mean, it's good. It's hard to find a good pair of Christmas, like, matching top and bottom pajamas. Like, there's so many out there, but I feel like not enough at the same time. Mm-hmm. No good ones. Mm-hmm. Like, I want ones I can wear all year. You know, like flannel dogs, that works all year long.
Yes. Maybe not, because it's pretty warm.
Yeah. But this is Northern California too. It's pretty cold most of the year. Like, I think people, like, my friend just went on her honeymoon to Hawaii, and while she was there, you know, they would run into people and they'd be like, yeah, we're from California. And they'd say, oh, so, God, like, why'd you come to Hawaii? You know? And she's like, what do you mean? We're from Northern California. Like, it's not like we live on the beach or.
Yeah, also our beaches
freezing.
Suck.
Yeah, freezing. It's
They're
dirty.
God. I want to get in the water.
Yick! For real. I think we actually live in a town on the coast, and I think I've been to the beach maybe 3 times in my life.
I once went to the beach in our town, and there was a sign up saying, don't go in the water.
Oh, that's always comforting.
And I, didn't listen to the sign, went in, came out with itchy legs.
I was going to say, and then you got Ebola. There you go. Okay, so Miss Environmentalist. So what does that mean, to be an environmentalist?
Yeah, so
you're still figuring that out yourself.
Honestly, every day. But I'm sure you've seen, recent headlines that if we don't get our act together as the human species over the next 10 years, shit's gonna hit the fan. So a lot of what I do at work involves communications and storytelling and translating a lot of the hard science into understandable and consumable stories that make an impact so that people do want to make a change in their habits and behaviors so that we can live on this planet for as long as possible.
Yeah, we're at least as long as we're around.
Right.
Like, I mean, meaning the two of us. Like, beyond us, I'm kind of like, no, I totally.
The harder I get into the science of it, the less I want children. Let's just say that.
Just add it to the list of reasons. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, and that's so funny because, I mean, it basically sounds like you're like a copywriter, but like specifically for environmentalism and, everything having to do with it, which is great because I feel like that makes more sense. Like, I've done copywriting, but one of my biggest things is I'm like, I can't accept a job for a company that, like, I don't understand what it is that they're trying to sell to the people, sort of thing. So it's so great that they're actually taking somebody who's studied, science and environmentalism and everything. And you're the one that's doing it as opposed to hiring a writer that is just kind of trying to communicate a message. Mm-hmm. That's good.
Scientists are great, but they don't know how to talk.
Yeah. That's okay. That's why they have you. Yeah. So where do you fall then on the paper straw debacle?
I mean, we can all agree that paper straws suck.
Oh, good. Okay, so I'm glad you said it and not me.
Yes. However, I am a metal straw enthusiast.
Oh, okay, great.
There's somewhat of a debate there because the impacts of mining metal to create these straws
right.
can be somewhat of more of a negative impact on the environment than a lasting plastic straw that never biodegrades.
Interesting.
But that's why you keep the metal straw and you don't throw it out after, a year of use. Like it lasts forever. So the way most people see it that I work with is, use your metal straw. Yeah. I'm fine with a freaking paper straw. Like, it disintegrates into my drink, but
after 5 minutes.
If I'm saving sea turtles out there, I can put up with it.
I'd eat paper to save the turtles. No, it's true. And that's so funny. If anybody's listening and they're like, what are they talking about? Like, what happened to plastic straws? Like, especially in the Bay Area, like, they are very...
You cannot find them.
Yeah, very green. Like, it's so funny because living in Los Angeles, I always assumed that would be like a very green, vegan, eco-friendly area. And I mean, I don't know why I was thinking that because of all the smog, that exists there. And it's true, people are really conscious in LA about what they put into their bodies, but it kind of stops there. It's sort of like, okay, how can I look good? What do I have to eat to keep myself healthy and looking good?
You guys don't have compost there, do you?
No. I mean, like, I'm sure some people do. Like, they probably live on Venice Beach, but it's not a thing. I mean, I've lived in several apartment complexes where we don't even have, like, recycling bins. Like, it's just one giant trash heap. And so it was amazing to me that we still have plastic straws, and that's, like, I don't see that changing anytime soon in LA, at least. But every time I come home to the Bay Area and I'm like, oh, wait, not only are there paper straws, but like I don't even have the option of getting like a plastic straw or a plastic bag at like a grocery store. My new favorite, though, I have to say, is as an alternative to the paper straws, they have those cup lids at Starbucks that are basically like adult sippy cups. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love them. They're so great. We had them yesterday on a little film project I was doing. I was like, where have these been? Yeah. We should have been using sippy cups years ago. Like, they never should have gone out of style.
One of the good arguments I can see against, needing plastic straws in restaurants is for certain members of the disability community.
Absolutely.
That rely on them to consume beverages.
Right. And I don't think paper straws are going to cut it.
No, absolutely not. But, I mean, then there's your metal straw debate.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, if I could carry a metal straw, someone else could.
But, right. Right. God, I feel like a dick, too. I offered you a plastic water bottle when you got here. Like, let me get you something to drink. Here's this, plastic bottle that's not going to ever degrade. Oh, my gosh. Okay, well, enough about the environment because, we just talk about that in America too much. Let's talk about romance. And today, Amelia and I are going to be discussing the book 99% Mine by Sally Thorne. And this romance was released January 2019. It's available on Amazon for $9.99 Kindle edition, although Amelia and I both bought the paperback version, old school. I mean, we actually talked about this. I've talked about this with a few people, but they're just, I feel like, revitalizing the romance industry with the new covers that they're doing. Covers. Yeah. And what's interesting is I was talking about this. We're actually doing a giveaway right now that'll probably be over by the time this episode airs, but we're doing a giveaway on our page right now where people are recreating this cover photo from a book we recently read called Prince of Sin. And it's, this very hot man embracing a very hot woman on the cover. And it's funny. I mean, even the author has like endorsed this whole like people recreating the cover. And so I posted in a Facebook group I'm part of where a lot of romance readers gather and said like, what do you guys think about, covers these days? Like, do you actually judge a book by its cover, especially romance novels? Because I feel like a lot of people who don't read romance do. And most of them said that they don't like reading books where it has people on the covers. Mm-hmm. Like they really appreciate the ones that are much more simple, have like a cool graphic, or even like the animated people on the cover, but which I think is becoming a lot more prevalent. And even in this book, 99% Mine, you've got a nice kind of graphic of the man and woman on the cover. It's not what you would consider your typical bodice ripper cover. So I feel like the romance industry is basically taking something that people have shied away from for years and trying to redesign it. Mm-hmm. And I think they're doing a really good job. Because, I mean, this is something that they're going to put in a lot more stores, I feel like, because people aren't going to be, you know, ashamed to buy it and read it in public, which, again, is something we've discussed on this podcast so many times, is that people feel the need to kind of hide...
I do.
The book cover.
I'm even guilty of it. And even with this book, sitting on the ferry in the morning,
really,
and on my commute, like I'll you know, hide
cover
the front
it
cover just because I'm embarrassed.
Because you're not reading Kafka.
Yeah, or I'm not reading, you know, like Scientific American and like. God. So I am guilty of it. My
response to that is, if you are reading, period, you should be proud of what you're reading. Totally. Like, and it's hard. I mean, I can't tell people not to be ashamed, or, you know, obviously people might ask questions, whatever you're reading. I think just based off the fact that not that many people are reading at all these days, if you are reading and you're reading in a public space, just love yourself for the fact that you're reading. Like, I think that is fantastic. If you are looking for a book that's, you know, cover friendly, this is definitely, again, this was published this year, so it is definitely on track with a lot of the more modern romances where they are kind of trading in the sexy covers for something a little more on the cute side. Mm-hmm. And until you get inside. Yeah. And that's, I guess, kind of one of my hesitations, and I know people have talked about this too, is that they kind of wonder if you have a cover like this that's like the more wholesome PG-13 kind of cover, does that mean that the content is going to also be on the tamer side, you know, and not as steamy? And I mean, I feel like it could be, but that you shouldn't necessarily, again, judge a book by its cover and assume that it's not going to be sexy because it doesn't have, you know, a hot couple on the cover making love in the shower.
Fabio and a white horse.
Oof. Yikes. All that hair. God, I just cut my hair and I still sweat like a pig. I can't imagine what that man has gone through. No. Okay, so if anybody is unfamiliar with Sally Thorne or with 99% Mine, you might have heard about Sally Thorne's kind of breakout novel, which came out in 2016, and that's The Hating Game. And if you haven't heard of it, you will soon enough, because it's being developed into a movie starring Lucy Hale and somebody named Robbie Amell. It looks like smell, but if you put an A instead of the S.
He must have made fun of in high school.
Robbie a smell. Oh my gosh, terrible. But yeah, so I mean, I'll see it. We both read The Hating Game, and I feel like that was kind of one of the reasons we chose this book too, was that I had reached out to Amelia and said, hey, I'm going to be in town. Do you want to do a podcast with me? And she was actually the one to suggest 99% Mine, but we had both read The Hating Game, absolutely loved it. If you haven't read it, I would suggest you do so. It has nothing to do with 99% Mine. It's not a series. You don't need to read them in order. But again, Hating Game was the one that kind of drew our interest to Sally Thorne as an author. And it's being made into a movie, so you might as well pick up a copy before they like rebrand all the books with like the movie, you know, poster.
Oh, I hate that.
God, that's the worst, isn't it? Like, I have to see Twilight everywhere in stores. Like, I don't need to see Kristen Stewart's Twilight everywhere. Like, so before reading 99% Mine, I mean, and I kind of know the answer to this already, had you read romance before?
Yes. The Hating Game was kind of one of my first introductory books into the genre, which was a great introduction into the genre. But I read a lot of nonfiction, and I still do. So yeah, Hating Game was one of my first introductions and never looked back. And I actually can recommend a great bookstore in LA, which you may have already know. Yeah.
The Ripped Bodice.
The Ripped Bodice.
Have you been?
I have been.
Oh my God. Yeah. That's so great. I love that The Hating Game was like one of your first romances, and then you've also already been to the Ripped Bodice.
Yep. One of my cousins lives a few blocks away. So
yes.
When I go visit her, we...
Oh, yeah. I can't speak highly enough about the Ripped Bodice. We love them. Any romance reader who's ever in Los Angeles needs to go. So that's fantastic. Did you buy another romance while you were there?
I got one of the like surprise packages.
Yes.
Yes.
The blind date with a book.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love those. So clever. Love it. Just makes me want to, live in a bookstore. It's my dream. Plus they have a really cute dog there too, so that's good. Okay, cool. So, I mean, you obviously, from reading The Hating Game, were interested enough to continue with the genre, or at least continue reading Sally Thorne. So great, and we'll talk about that too, because I think this book is, I don't want to say night and day from The Hating Game, but definitely a big difference, I guess, from like what our expectations, at least. But before we get to our synopsis, I want to give a quick shout out to Blush Magazine. Jackie, the editor-in-chief for Blush Magazine, reached out to me last month and asked if I'd be interested in having Boobies and Noobies featured in their September issue. And of course, I was so excited. For anybody that doesn't know, Blush is a digital magazine for romance-obsessed humans like me. They feature exclusive video interviews with some of our favorite authors. There's articles and book reviews for upcoming romance releases. Honestly, I can't believe that I wasn't subscribed to Blush already, and you can bet your bottom dollar that I will be subscribing for the next issue. The cost per month figures out to less than $3 US. So I think I can save myself the pumpkin spice latte this month and subscribe to Blush Magazine, and you should too. Check us out in the September issue, and you can follow Blush Magazine on social media as well as blushmagazine.com.au. Thank you so much, Blush. And now, a quick Podcoin promo. Podcoin is the app that pays you to listen to this podcast and all your other favorites. Just get the Podcoin app on iPhone or Android. It's free, super easy to use, and you can use the Podcoins you earn to claim gift cards or donate to charity. Check out the Podcoin app and use the invite code BoobsNoobs to earn 300 Podcoins just for signing up. And now, back to the boobylicious content. So before we get too far into it, let me give everyone a brief synopsis of 99% Mine, and this comes straight from Amazon.com. Here we go. Crush, noun. A strong and often short-lived infatuation, particularly for someone beyond your reach. Darcy Barrett has undertaken a global survey of men. She's traveled the world and can categorically say that no one measures up to Tom Valeska, whose only flaw is that Darcy's twin brother Jamie saw him first and claimed him forever as his best friend. Okay, pause. Can I just say that when I first read that synopsis, I was like, oh shit, are her and her brother both in love with this dude? Like, I was like, get ready for like the ultimate like love triangle. Right. Like girl and brother both in love with Tom Valeska. Spoiler, they're not. Yeah. So you can just get that dream out of your head. So disappointing. Okay, continuing. Despite Darcy's best efforts, Tom's off limits and loyal to her brother 99%. That's the problem with finding her dream man at age 8 and peaking in her photography career at age 20, ever since she's had to learn to settle for good enough. When Darcy and Jamie inherit a tumble-down cottage from their grandmother, they're left with strict instructions to bring it back to its former glory and sell the property. Darcy plans to be in an aisle seat halfway across the ocean as soon as the renovations start. But before she can cut and run, she finds a familiar face on her porch. House flipper extraordinaire Tom's arrived. He's bearing power tools, and he's single for the first time in almost a decade. Suddenly, Darcy's considering sticking around to make sure her twin doesn't ruin the cottage's inherent magic with his penchant for gray and chrome. She's definitely not staying because of her new business partner's tight t-shirts or that perfect face that's inspiring her to pick up her camera again. Soon, sparks are flying, and it's not the faulty wiring. It turns out 1% of Tom's heart might not be enough for Darcy anymore. This time around, she's switching things up. She's going to make Tom Valeska 99% hers. There you go. Oh,
Read to
man.
the end to find out who that last 1% belongs to.
I know. Where does it go? What? So much math in one book. Okay, I have to say, just off the bat, this is a very easy read. So this is one that I picked up at, where did I grab this? In fact, I think I did grab it at the airport the last time I was coming home. started it, got like halfway through, and then kind of forgot about it, and then finished the other half yesterday. So, I mean, it really is a very quick read. Like, if you had like a 5-hour flight or something, you could knock this bad boy out. Like, no problem. The language is so easy to understand, so relatable, and it's good. I feel like it's good writing. Like, yes. I don't know about you, but I found it a very amusing. Like, I thought the dialogue was really fun. They sound like real people, which is like, can be both good and bad. But yeah, they definitely, it's very real. Like, no part of this is fantasy, like, which I think for some people you will love, and other people will kind of find, I don't want to say problematic, but just sort of like less of an escape. And I know that that's what a lot of people look for when they pick up a book, is they want more of an escape. And this might not be the one for you if that's the case, because it does have several moments throughout that are kind of like downer moments. Not that anybody dies. There's nothing sad in that regards. Like, I mean, we do have a dead grandmother at the beginning, but no need to worry in that regards. It's just more of kind of the characters themselves than their insecurities. Okay, so let me ask you off the bat, sort of, what do you like about this book?
Well, I'm drawn to Sally Thorne's writing.
Same.
Whenever I start reading one of her books, I can't put it down.
Yeah.
And I'm not exactly sure what about her writing does that for me. But,
okay.
With The Hating Game, yeah, I read it in like 2 days. This one I read in 3 days, and it's just one of those books that once you start, like, I can't put it down. I want to know how it ends.
Yeah. I was surprised, too, to find that she's an Australian author.
Yes, which is funny because in The Hating Game, I don't know if you noticed, but there's a couple slip-ups where she uses some Australian spellings of things.
See, and I didn't notice. I know that is something that sticks out to people for sure. That's something that I don't notice as much, and
this one I didn't catch.
I didn't notice it at all in this. Like, reading this, I never would have guessed that she, you know, I was like about to say English isn't her first language. That's not right at all. But I mean, it's true. I mean, it really is. You know, you live in a different country. You've got your own vernacular and your own slang, and you do spell certain words differently. Yeah. How do you spell theater?
How do I spell
theater?
Oh, it depends on what it's for.
Okay. That was always like a thing I like would wonder about, is like, do people go ER or RE?
I think I tend to go RE more.
I do too. Maybe it's because we used to do theater. Yeah. Like, I feel like that's like the, I'm in theater. Like,
but when I talk about a movie theater.
Yeah, that's ER.
ER.
Right? Okay. Just checking.
Yeah.
I don't think that's necessarily an Australian thing, just to be clear, but that was just something that crossed my mind as we were discussing this, that those are the two words that I always wonder about, is theater. And so I'm like, okay. My own personal musings, but whatever. Yeah, carry on. What else so we both are fans of her writing. I mean, and it's funny because just on the cover alone, it's got an excerpt from Kristen Higgins, who's another New York Times bestselling author. And it's got a very, what's her name? The one that wrote the, like, Confessions of a Shopaholic. Is that Sophie Kinsella? Something. Yes. Sophie, it's either Sophie or Sophia Kinsella, but it's kind of got that vibe to me too. Like, it's very fun. Like, it's playful, and even though the characters can be downers and like have all their insecurities, it's still very upbeat. And I think that's kind of what gets you going. Like you said, you read it until it's done. Like, right. You want to keep reading it.
And the way she writes makes it really easy for me to visualize the scenes that are happening throughout the book. She uses very descriptive language, I feel, which I love reading, but it's honestly, it's hard for me to find a book that I like that will, like, I'll continue reading to the end. Like, I read a lot of books halfway through and stop reading them. Yeah. And for me, this is not one of them.
Okay, good. Yeah. Good. That's good to know. What about the characters? What are your thoughts on our characters? So our main characters, we've got, of course, Darcy Barrett, and it's told exclusively from her point of view. We read a lot of romance for the podcast, and I feel like a lot of romance these days is written from a dual perspective.
Which I don't.
You don't like that?
No.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so maybe that's why you haven't read enough romance, is you've been waiting for that POV that you need. Yeah, so this is first person from Darcy's point of view. And Tom is obviously the, apple of her eye. She's been in love with him since she was a child. And then her brother Jamie, her twin brother, I mean, they hammer that in really hard that he's her twin. Jamie is kind of there. He's like present, but not actually physically present, like throughout the story until much later on. And then Darcy has her super cute friend, Truly, who I absolutely adore. So, what are your thoughts on our cast of characters?
Yeah, I definitely preferred the cast of characters in the Hating Game.
Same.
99% mine characters. Well, Darcy, I felt a little bit harder to relate to her.
Okay.
I also found her to be annoying sometimes.
Yeah, I used the word frustrating a lot. I'm with you on that one. You know what? When we first met Darcy, I was like, oh, I'm going to love this book. I'm going to love this girl because you first meet her and she's like a badass bartender, doesn't take shit from anybody. She has a heart rhythmia. I mean, so she has a heart defect that she's lived with her whole life, and she doesn't let it affect her as best she can. Like, she just, tries to do anything that anybody else can do. And she's cut off all her hair. She's got like this badass haircut. And which I can totally relate to, is that she loves nothing more than like traveling. Like, she always wants to be on a flight somewhere. Like, she talks about within like the first few pages with the new girl that's working at the bar, how she, used to be a wedding photographer for a while because she was like, yeah, I was living in Italy and I needed something to do, or like, and she's basically worked and lived everywhere. And this is the first time she's been kind of in one place since she was a kid. And I was like, okay, I get this. I totally understand this, because I feel like I don't do it as much as she does, but I've moved kind of consistently every 2 years to like a new city. And like, I just hit 3 years in April in Los Angeles. And so I've kind of got that sort of stir crazy thing going on where it's like, okay, I need to be moving. Like, what's next? Where do I go next? So yeah, I really liked her at the beginning. And then as it went on, she did become more and more frustrating or annoying, as you put it.
I think for me, she seemed in her relationships, whether it was with her brother or Tom or Truly, she seems kind of childish and immature.
Yes.
And like, fine, sure, that's part of her personality, but the things that she would do throughout the book kind of irked me a little bit.
Well, and we never really see her grow up.
Right.
Which is interesting. I think that was kind of one of my biggest issues with the story, is that the pacing is really interesting. Like, it's you meet Darcy, and a good first third, at least, of the book seems very much just about her. And then Tom comes into the picture earlier than that. But
a lot of it is about the renovation of the house.
Yeah. I guess it was kind of like I couldn't really figure out what the focus of the book. Like, it almost seemed like it could have been a few different books to me, where you had this whole relationship between, this girl who's been in love with this guy since she was a kid. And I'm like, okay, that's a great story, especially if you throw in the brother. And Tom's backstory is really interesting too. You find out that basically he didn't really have a lot of, parenting happening as a child. So he was kind of foster raised by Jamie and Darcy's parents. So he sort of grew up in their house too. And I'm like, okay, that's really interesting. I love that dynamic between the three of them. But then you also have this whole renovation of this house, which to me just didn't fit into the story in any way. I guess I just kind of kept trying to figure out I feel like you could have removed that part of the story and it wouldn't have really made a difference. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, they're renovating her grandmother's house, and she talks about how this house was so important to her and her grandmother was so important to her. Like, I kept assuming that by the end they were going to live in her grandmother's house. Like, were you thinking that too?
Yeah, I was thinking that. And I also thought it was interesting how she went into pretty great detail about, like, each of the workers that were at the renovation site and, like, learning about their personalities as well. And I was like, I don't see how this is relevant to the story.
Right. Like, because they pop in and out and everything, but it kind of gave me that vibe of, what was that movie with Diane Lane, where she, Under the Tuscan Sun, where it's like, you know, she's living in Tuscany and she buys a house and she's renovating it, but it's more of like a personal journey.
I forgot about that movie.
Yeah, but it's kind of similar in that you have like the 3 guys that are working on this house with her, and she kind of becomes involved in each of their lives and they touch her in a certain way, and she has romance on the side, but like that's not the main storyline. It's more like a finding yourself kind of story. And this, I feel like that's kind of what I was like expecting with like the house renovation thing, but it just, I don't know. I just couldn't get into the whole house renovation. And I love a good house renovation.
HGTV, girl.
Oh, yeah. And there's like a bunch of reno romances. Like that's totally like a subgenre now is, I think it's basically people got so hooked on HGTV and they just couldn't get enough of Chip and Joanna that they're like, let's shiplap romance. And so they really did. There's so many different, and I've read romances where there's home renovations and it works. Like, I mean, in fact, there was a Hallmark Channel movie, I think last year, that was like all about a renovation and how the 2 of them had to work together, and, you know, she wanted the new and he wanted the old and they had to compromise. Like, you know, it's Hallmark bullshit, right? But this one, it wasn't really about that. Like, there were moments where she would help out and, you know, she would compromise on things, but it wasn't like a make or break their relationship sort of thing, you know? Like, it just, I don't know. It just kind of felt forced to me with that whole like house renovation thing.
I thought the photography and underswears honestly had more of an impact on their relationship.
Yeah.
Than the renovation did.
But I feel like because there was so much time put in the renovation that the photography and the underswears were underutilized. Like it was, again, it felt like it was too much happening. And this is like a constant thing we've talked about on this podcast, is that I've read so many books where I feel like the romance authors feel like there isn't enough happening in their book. Like the romance isn't enough, or like this simple story isn't enough. And it becomes overcomplicated and oversaturated with all these details that you're like, this is great. This is great. This is great. But is it great all together? Like, I don't know, you know? So, and I mean, I'm sure there's some people who have read this book that absolutely loved it. And I'm not saying that there aren't parts of this that I didn't love, because I definitely did. But yeah, it felt like too much. It just felt like too much stuff happening, because the photography thing and the underswears are adorable. Like especially the underwear thing, which unfortunately I feel like but again, I feel like it could have like not been there, and because it's not even really related to either one of them. Like, it's not their business. But we'll fill everybody in so they actually know what we're talking about. Underswears. We're not saying underwear wrong. That's the name of the business, is underswears. But basically the whole story that we've got going on here is Darcy inherits this house with her brother, and they have been tasked to renovate it and sell it and split the proceeds, and that's kind of their inheritance from their grandmother. And Tom comes into the picture because, one, he has just started his own house renovation flipping business, and 2, he's a longtime friend of both Darcy and Jamie. So he knew their grandmother. I mean, he was basically raised by their grandmother too. So he has a personal take in that too. I love that. I think that all starts out beautifully. Like, it's a good setup. Yeah. I mean, it makes perfect sense. And as Jamie's not there, he's kind of overseeing renovations and like paying for things.
And even though he's not there physically, you still feel him as a
oh my God. Yeah, because it's all Darcy ever talks about. Yeah. And then when the romance starts to build between Darcy and Tom, it's all Tom talks about, of like, well, we can't tell Jamie. We can't tell Jamie. I'm like, oh, sweet Jesus.
It was like, fine. So it was like, why are they so afraid of
this
Jamie?
Yeah. So Jamie, this is probably, I don't think I've ever read a book like this where there's a character that's not physically there for 90% of the book, but you feel like he's on every page. And sometimes in a good way, sometimes not so much. Because when you finally meet him, you're like, this guy sucks. Such a douche. But yeah, so I mean, while they're renovating this house, you know, Darcy and Tom, I don't want to say they fall back in love, because it seems like they've always been in love with each other. And you kind of wonder, like, oh my God, why did it take this long? Mm-hmm. I had to keep reminding myself, too, that they were 26.
Oh, I didn't even know the age.
Yeah, she says in the beginning that she's 26. And then there's, like, mention between Tom and Jamie of, like, oh, yeah, you know, we're not getting any younger kind of thing. I'm like, you shut your dirty whore mouths. Like, that is not acceptable. But, yeah, I thought Tom, to me, was a more interesting character.
I agree.
Than Darcy. Not that she didn't, I don't know how to say it. It's like, she definitely, I feel like characters that I find the most interesting are because of their flaws. Mm-hmm. And she's a very flawed person, but she has a lot of love. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, good for you. I like that about you. It's kind of like the one redeeming thing about Darcy is that she's always trying to escape. She, you know, it gets so much into how she basically felt like she wasn't a part of her family, like Tom was more a part of her family. And I kept trying to figure out why, and I think it was just because of the heart condition. And because she talks about how, like, they would leave her on vacation and they'd go and do all these things without her. And I'm like, she couldn't go? Like, she couldn't get on the plane? No, well, of course she could get on the plane. She's been traveling around the world. Yeah. She gets on planes all the time. So, yeah, I just couldn't figure out why she felt like such an outsider in this family. Like, and especially because she's, you know, Jamie's her twin. And so she's always comparing herself to him. Okay, I get that. That makes sense. I'm an only child, so I don't have... You are too, aren't you? No, you have a sister. But that's like a sibling thing, right? Like sibling rivalry, yeah. And I get it, you know. But at the same time, Tom is flawed, but his are more... They're both very flawed in that they place these flaws on themselves. Like, they're... Yes. It's not that anybody sees them as, like, the way they see themselves. It's just that they're so insecure. And you don't really get that from Tom until much later in the story.
And another thing that I like more about Tom is Darcy, like, after the first couple chapters, I felt like, oh, I know this person. Like, yeah. What else can I know about her?
Right.
Where Tom, there is more of an essence of mystery throughout the whole book. And you're like, who is this person?
Yeah, because it almost felt like the first half of it concentrated very much on Darcy, and that Tom was just kind of like living in her life. Mm-hmm. Like, he is a part of her world. And then once they kind of start getting closer, you get to... He reveals a lot more about himself, and you're just kind of like, oh, this guy's pain, like, goes deep. Like, layers. This... Yeah, super layered. Like, you peel back those layers, and it's... I mean, it just keeps getting darker and darker. They both have very dark pasts, mm-hmm. but not in, like, the typical way that you would think in a romance. Like, neither of them... And this is not me disregarding somebody's pain or depression or anxiety in any way, because there's no way to tell someone how to act or feel, you know, obviously. But neither of them, like, had, like, suffered from abuse or, like, you know, not even neglect either. I mean, Tom's mom was a single parent. His dad left them. And so he basically, you know, grew up with Darcy and her brother. But I mean, he had a great upbringing in that regards too with them. She obviously has her heart condition, and she felt kind of left out by anything that Jamie and Tom did together. But again, I'm just sort of like, okay, I'm trying to figure out why either of you have so many insecurities.
That was another thing that I felt I didn't get the full picture.
Yeah. No, for either of them. Yeah. For either of them, like Darcy, I feel like because we spend so much more time with her, I can almost understand her more. It's not that I agree with it or it frustrates me any less, but at least I can understand it. But I'm just kind of like, okay, so I do like, she later explains why she does all the traveling. She's like, okay, it's because, you know, when I go to these new countries, nobody knows me. I'm not Jamie's sister.
Right.
I'm not that girl with the heart condition. I'm just me. I'm just, you know, a fun stranger in a new city. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool. I get that. Mm-hmm. That makes perfect sense. And then part of it is also that Jamie, and this was my problem with her brother, is that whenever he sees her, or even on the phone, he's constantly telling her, like, you don't think that you could be with Tom, right? Mm-hmm. Like, look at him and then look at you. Like, it was one of those things where it's like, I wasn't sure if it was meant to come across. At first, I thought it was just kind of like, you know, sister, brother, like, trash talk
kind of thing. He wants him all for himself.
Yeah, right. Like, it seemed like it was very, like, teasing at first, but then when we actually meet Jamie and he's still saying these things, like, please stop looking at him like that. This is embarrassing. Like, he's only here for me. Yeah, it was very childish. Like, and then you threw in Tom, who also kind of had this childish thing, because he gets out of an 8-year relationship with who we assume to be the one woman he's ever been with. Mm-hmm. And you would expect him to be, like, you know, a little damaged from that. But it seems like his damage has nothing to do with her. That it's just all about how he's facing these unrealistic, like, he basically thinks he has to be perfect or else he's going to be, like, cut out of their lives, which I'm like, when did they ever show that to you as a kid? Like, mm-hmm. I don't know. It just seems like, and I guess it's kind of comes from Darcy, because I know he mentions to Darcy multiple times, like, stop calling me perfect. Like, you say I'm the perfect man. You measure all these men up against me and everything. But I'm not perfect. I'm not perfect. And she, you know, I
never felt like I got the reasoning why he wasn't perfect. Because
right.
even at the end, I was like, yeah, you still seem pretty perfect.
Right. Right. Well, and she even tells him, like, when he's like, no, I made a mistake. I did this, da, da, da. You know, she's like, okay, it's fine. I still love you. Like, I love she even says, she's like, you're perfect for me. Right. Like, and I'm like, okay.
Which is cute.
Yeah, no, for real. Like, I'm like, okay, I guess that's where we're going with this. But yeah, I don't know. It just, and then at the end, it's a very interesting ending. Like, because they have, like, their moment, they're like, what do you call it? Like, their moment of despair or whatever, like their little breakup moment. Mm-hmm. And it's like 25 pages before the ending.
I know.
Like, it's really quick. And then basically from there, he being Tom, like, disappears. Yeah. Like, he's just gone. He, like, takes off. He's like, I'm sorry, I can't be with you. I'm sorry, I'm not good enough.
It was very melodramatic.
It's very melodramatic. And you're just kind of like, what? Okay. And everyone's, like, basically telling him, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, okay, you made a mistake. Great, let's help you. Like, mm-hmm. let us help you. And he pieces out. And I'm like, okay, that's unprofessional, bruh. And also, these are your friends.
He spent so long trying to prove himself.
Right, to just, like, take out, it seemed very cowardly. Like, I was just sort of like, where is this coming from? This doesn't seem in character with you. Yeah. And then he just, you know, shows up again, and you're like, oh, okay.
And Jamie and Truly are in love.
Yeah, right. And then they all go on a cruise together. I'm like, what? Like, it was very, I don't know. It was almost like too many coincidences. Like, mm-hmm. I did like the kind of reveal about Jamie and Truly. Like, I thought that was cute. Mm-hmm. I almost wish that there's a book about them. Mm-hmm. Like, and I don't know if Sally Thorne, I don't know if she's thinking about it. It's one of those ones where when you read romance, you can, when they set up side characters, you can almost assume, oh, okay, so this is going to be a series. Mm-hmm. The author is going to write another book about these two characters. That's what I got out of this, was I was like, oh, Jamie and Truly are going to have a book, and I would read the shit out of that, mm-hmm. because Truly to me is the most fun character in the book. I mean, we don't learn a lot about her, but I was like, I get you, girl. I would read your story. But yeah, I don't know if that's the plan or not, but you know, was that you too? Did you feel like the pacing was, like, a little off?
I felt it was very rushed at the end.
Okay.
It was very drawn out, like 2/3 of the way in.
Yeah.
She spent many pages on things that I feel like could have happened a lot quicker.
Like the home renovation. The
home renovation.
Everything with the home renovation is like, it's, you know, and it's hard to say, like, I don't know. Like, because I'm trying to think how it would have gone without that almost. Like, I'm trying to think if there was no home renovation, what would this story be? And I'm like, it really would have just, it's kind of just the excuse for the two of them to come together again, right? Is the home renovation. But it could have been anything. Like, in fact, you know what I was expecting? And we actually read a story like this recently where somebody's parent had passed away, and they had to box up the house. They basically had to box up the house and, get rid of everything and figure out what to do with the house. That's almost what I was expecting more of, was like him just being there to help pack the house away and sell it. And again, it feels so wrong that they don't buy the house. Like, I was shocked that they did not buy the house. I thought that was, and I know that it's part of the will that they sell it and they get to keep the money. And what is nice, I did like the ending where they include Tom in that when they sell the house, he gets a third of the proceeds as opposed to like the 5% he was going to take, because their reasoning is like, well, you're family. Like, this belongs to you too. I thought that was really sweet. But yeah, I don't know. It just sort of, the whole home renovation thing just, I don't know. I feel like it just could have been better. Like, it just could have been better. Like, if you went with that storyline, and it's, I don't know. Maybe it's because we read The Hating Game first too, that we had very high expectations, because I felt like The Hating Game was,
it's one of my favorite books.
Oh God, it was so good. And it was so seamlessly done. Like, it just, everything flowed so well. The characters were so great. And in this one, I give Sally Thorne full credit that her characters are definitely very detailed. Like, they have their stories, they have their flaws, they have their strengths. You fall in love with the fact that, or at least I do, that Darcy is like addicted to sugar. Like, there's this really cute scene, which I wish there was follow-up on, in the very beginning, where she, has like a bad night or whatever, and she goes to like her 7-Eleven that she like regularly frequents and buys all this candy, and the clerk knows her because she buys sugar, and he always gives her shit for it, because he'll like talk about like the keto book that he's been reading, and like, this is killing you, you're gonna get diabetes and all this stuff, and she'll eat marshmallows in front of him just to be like, fuck you. And I was like, oh my God, that's so funny. Like, but then that never comes back in the book. Like, they do mention her sugar addiction later on, which I was like, okay. But it was one of those things where I'm like, I wanted like one more scene with that guy, to be like, here, I bought a celery stick or something, just to like make him happy. I don't know. Oh, okay. And then the other thing that I thought was going in a very different direction is that she works at a bar, right? And I feel like a lot of the bartenders I know don't drink as much. Like, I think that's kind of one of the things about being a bartender, is it's like, it's a job. You're there, you get it done, sort of thing. It's not like you're drinking on the job. She has like a borderline alcohol addiction. Like, did you get that vibe at all?
I didn't get that vibe.
Okay. Maybe it's just because this is like super fresh for me. Like, I just finished the book, but there's like multiple moments where she, like, when she's at Truly's house, she like has like a conversation with the bottle of wine where she's like, don't look at me like that. I don't need you. Like, and then she like has some wine, puts it back. Why are you doing this to me? I'm like, girlfriend, if you were at the point where you are chatting up a bottle of wine, I have concerns. Right. Like, it was at the point where I was like, oh God, is this going to turn into a thing about her being an alcoholic? Like,
for me, those things are more aligned with her just being childish.
Yeah. And that's kind of how her brother treats her, and how even Tom kind of falls in line with that. Is, they give her shit for, she works at a bar, she stays out late, she, will go out and party and not come home until 5 a.m. and everything. And I think it's because they're also 26, like they're all the same age, and they don't live their lives that way. Although Jamie, they all talk about how Jamie's a womanizer and everything. So I'm just kind of like, I don't know why he's allowed to like give her shit.
Standards.
Yeah, for real.
They treat her really delicately, which also annoyed me. Like, I guess she has a heart condition.
And I think that's what it was, where that came from, but it did.
Tom didn't tell her that he had broken up with Megan, like, months and months later.
It's that he broke up with his fiance, and then they kind of pass it off as like, okay, did he not tell her because Jamie implies, and she takes it to mean that he didn't tell her because, you know, oh, he's embarrassed. He thinks I'm just going to throw myself at him sort of thing. But really, I mean, you find out that Tom is just as obsessed with her as she is with him. So you're like, okay, that's fine. You know, I love that she brings out the like animalistic alpha man in him, because throughout, Tom is like what I would call an almost too nice guy. Like he's so nice to everyone, and he's so sweet, but like she talks about early on how he is like a tiger, like his nickname was Tiger, and she's like, yeah, and I'm the only one that sees that he has like this inner tiger ready to like pounce, and like it only will come out for a little bit and it'll go back inside. And so I do like that when, you know, they're together longer, she kind of brings out, not just in the bedroom, but like, you know, more assertive, more dominant, you know, point of view from him. Because that's, I don't know, I find it hot, but
Me too.
and it was never like, you know, like I don't even want to say dominant, because I mean, people who read romance or listen to this podcast will know dominant as like a very specific romance. It's not that. There's nothing like that. But you know, he just is more sure of himself and more confident when he's with her. I guess that's kind of the thing I look forward to in romance, is like, how do they affect each other? And because it's so realistic, it's so just kind of like them living their lives and like no big changes. It's hard to kind of pick up on how they affect each other. 'Cause like she does start to work with him. And so she gets up in the mornings and kind of has a more realistic work schedule. But I'm like, that doesn't make you more of an adult emotionally. That doesn't, you know, change who you are inside. Like, you know, and then at the same time for him, she's like, you're perfect. I love you the way you are. You can't do anything wrong. And he's still, you know, down on himself about like, I'm not going to please you. I'm not going to please everyone. And so I guess that kind of tied into the rushed ending too, was I was sort of waiting for that moment to click where I'm like, oh,
that's why he's not.
Yeah,
perfect.
he can't do this without you. And oh, you're like this because of the way he affected you. Like it never really got there for me. 'Cause like even at the end, she basically has this whole conversation with him about how she's relied on Jamie for so long. Like Jamie's always there, whether she wants him or not. He's her twin brother. And even at the end, Jamie's the one that goes with her to her heart doctor appointment. 'Cause she hasn't been taking, like, her medicine's been expired and like she's not taking care of herself. And like Tom shows up, but I'm just like, okay, Jamie's the one though that's still spearheading this whole thing. She's still relying on him. Like, yeah, I don't know. They had a really, I never really saw the moment where she and Jamie reconciled either. And they made such a big deal out of how they're twins and, you know, she's felt left out for all these years. There was never that scene where it's like she confronts him and tells him how she feels. Yeah, they just go on a cruise together. The four of them. Yeah. Yay. But, yeah, so I guess...
I think maybe Truly brings them together because...
Yeah.
Once Jamie starts dating Truly, it's like, well...
Yeah. So,
are
they dating?
That's what I got.
I don't even know if that's what it was, because I feel like when they go on the cruise, he was like excited she was invited, but
Didn't
that they weren't
like have rings and were going to propose to one another.
No. It's like, okay, so let me catch everybody up. First of all, Darcy has a friend named Truly, who's the sweetest character in the whole damn book, and she has an underwear line called Underswears, and I would buy the hell out of this underwear, and it's probably out there, but it's like she describes it as like it's most of it is like high-waisted, wedgie free, and like on the back it's embroidered with like funny, mean sayings. Like what are some of the ones that they have? They have one, it's human flotsam, like flotsam and jetsam. It's human flotsam. And it's like a little sailor print. There's an anchor on it. And then there's other ones that just say like asshole or dickhead and stuff. And I'm like, great, love it. And there's a whole scene where she makes a menswear line, but she basically makes like one as like a sample and is like, nudge, nudge, hey, you know, Miss Photographer Darcy, you should get someone to model this for you. Oh, look, Tom's here. And that's a really cute scene. So that was actually probably one of my favorite scenes is when he models the underwear for her and he gets hard while he's doing it.
Resurrection.
Yeah, he's just like, I'm having a personal problem. Give me a minute. Like, it's pretty funny. I mean, there's definitely super funny moments, and truly super cute. And then you find out that Jamie basically met Truly by, I don't know if he sought her out specifically, but it's like he messaged Truly on her website for her underwear line. And it almost sounded like a pen pal story. Like they just started talking online. And when he realized that she was friends with his sister, he was like, hey, I need you to like kind of spy on her, make sure she's okay. You know, tell me what's going on with her. And it's definitely implied that like him and Truly are going to become a thing. But no, when they go on the cruise at the end, what's his face? Tom has the ring that he had proposed to his ex-fiance with in his pocket. And Jamie brings the black sapphire ring in his pocket that Darcy is obsessed with. It was their grandmother's ring. Darcy wanted it. Jamie was like, no, it's mine. And Jamie exchanges it with him. They trade rings so that Tom can propose to Darcy with the sapphire ring that she loves. I don't think it was meant to be that Tom is about to propose to Truly with the other ring, because she even says something. She's like, oh God, whoever ends up with you, like that would suck that they'd have to wear like a used engagement ring.
Okay, that makes more sense.
But no, I'm with you. That I had to like look at that like a second time to be like, wait, did we just fast forward like so far in the future that
engagement?
Yeah, double engagement getting on the cruise ship, but like yeah, so it's a cute, as far as proposals go, it's pretty cute, it's pretty casual, which is kind of how I would describe their whole romance. Like, it's very casual. Like, even they have that weird scene where they go out on, like, it's kind of a date, but not really. And, like, the guy that's basically Darcy's fuck buddy is there with somebody else, and she doesn't care.
Pretend to flirt with each
Yeah,
other.
exactly. And I was like, is that what this is? Is, like, they're pretend flirting to, like, show up that guy, but then he's like kissing her neck and stuff, but they're still talking about like their friendship. Like it just was very casual, which I guess is indicative of just kind of dating nowadays. But for me, who's someone that's like, no, I'm gonna meet somebody by bumping into them at the grocery store.
My meet cute.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, okay, this is different. Like for me, like it never really felt like you know, falling in love. It never really felt like falling in love, I guess. And I guess maybe that's kind of the thing is they're already in love. Right. And so it's less of a will these two get together kind of story and more of like, okay, when are these two going to get together? Because like you have zero doubts from the get-go that they're going to be together. Like they have to be. They've known each other so long. They're so in love with each other. Nobody measures up to anybody else. They've literally told each other that. You're just waiting.
Well, and that's why when I was reading it, I was like, well, it's so obvious that it's not going to happen then.
Yeah.
But then it did.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, spoiler alert. They actually get together at the end of the romance novel. Go figure. But yeah, it's fun. Like overall, my like overall impressions of the book is that it's a fun read. It's an easy read. The characters are really interesting. If you can put up with their insecurities, which I find very frustrating, but I guess it's just because these aren't the insecurities that I have. Right. So it's easy for me from the outside to be like, what do you mean you don't think you're good enough? Of course you are, sort of thing. But if you can put up with that, it's a really sweet love story of, just two people that were meant to be together, finally getting together. I don't know if it's a lot beyond that. Like, I guess maybe that's kind of the thing too, is like, because they're going to be together, there's not as much excitement or like adventure in a way, is that you're just sort of like, okay, well, we know what's going to happen. and obviously romance is a very predictable genre. Like, and normally I love that. That's one of the things I love about romance. Yeah, is it's comforting. You go into it and you know that things are going to work out. And of course I knew that going into this book, but I guess it was so prominent from the get-go. And that's always kind of one of my problems with lived-in romance. And we've talked about that on this show before. Some people love a lived-in romance where you're like, these people already have a history. They're already getting their second, third, fourth chance. Like, finally they're going to get together. I prefer the first meet. I like the people who it is their first time meeting. And I think it's an easier story to write. I think when you have all this history, it makes it harder. So, that being said, it's a sweet story. Yeah. What do you think overall?
Yeah, I agree. I would still recommend my fellow romance novel readers to give it a go.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you said, there were some parts that annoyed me, but I was able to look past that.
Yeah.
Easily.
We both finished the book. Yeah. We both kept reading.
Yeah. I think it's a good, lighthearted summer beach read.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. No, I completely agree. Okay, so do you have a specific excerpt that you'd like to share with the class here?
Well, I did fold a page on a few as I was reading.
Oh, well, there you go. And I will say, as far as the steamy level goes in this book, it is more of a PG-13. You're not getting any graphic language as far as put your cock in my pussy or anything like that. It's not, it's very, and I feel like I don't want to say that's kind of where these we talked about this earlier with the covers, how sometimes people are thinking that because it's got a more wholesome cover, the content's more wholesome. This is one of those where I'm like, okay, it definitely, it doesn't have as hot of sex scenes or as many of sex scenes. That being said, because I think the sexual tension level is a 10.
Really good at that.
Yeah, the tension between the two of them, you're just like, oh my God, are they gonna do it on the counter? Oh my God, are they gonna do it in the bathroom? Yeah. Oh my God, are they gonna do it up against the fireplace that's crumbling down around them? You are waiting for them to bone, so that when they do, finally, it was worth it. It was worth it. Even if it's not super graphic. Absolutely fine. I actually personally found some of the kissing scenes to be pretty great. This isn't a sex scene, but I literally opened to a page where it says, "I'll protect you. I absolutely love your dick. Did I make that clear enough last night?"
Okay, I'm going to go for one on page 267.
Okay.
He's laughing even as his endless gentle push turns into an easy back and forth between us. He's bigger than anyone I've ever had. I hate the intrusive thought. How dare my brain even think of any others? But it's coupled with the realization that he's taking care of me, and it's the hottest thing. And then a few lines later, I don't want careful, I want honest. Finally, that first slip of his control, its brain meltingly good, feeling his body being so authentic. I'm getting this every day, deeper, Tom. I want you harder. Automatically, I put my hand down between us. My orgasm is my responsibility. Except, apparently it isn't. That's what I'm here for, dummy. He admonishes me in between freestyle stroke breaths. He tickles his fingertips against me, even as he holds himself back. Is your heart okay?
Yeah, and then she thinks that's really sexy. She's like, he's the first man I've ever been with that's asked me if my heart's okay. But she doesn't normally tell people. Right. But he's known her forever, so of course he knows that she has a heart condition. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's cute. It's hot. And you know what? He when they first start hooking up too, is this, are you good? Do you want to keep going? And she's like, yes, enthusiastic, yes. Mm-hmm. Keep going. So I always like when they, ask people.
Mm-hmm. Consent.
Love it. Okay. Here is just a few pages before. This is just when they're kind of first getting into it. And they've got some, I have to say, I really like Sally Thorne's kissing scenes. Mm-hmm. I remember this from Hating Game too, that I liked that. Okay, here we go. I have now found something I like better than sugar, and I'm an instant addict. Worse, a junkie. I've subsisted on his 1-second glances my whole life, and now I've got his mouth on mine. I know what I'd do to keep it. I know what I'd do to keep him. I know what I'd do to keep him. He should feel afraid. The first touch of his tongue loosens my knees, and I'm grateful that he's holding me up. I shudder a breath out. He inhales it, changes our angles, exhales it back to me. Air is better from his lungs. Life is better with his kiss. The word mine is now something I need to make him understand. The second touch of his tongue is an inward slide, and it's not calculated to seduce me. I'm being licked for my flavor. I feel the point of his tooth, the scratch of his chin on mine. There's a pause of deliberation for a moment, and then I feel his pleasure shivering out of his body, absorbed into my skin. I've been tasted, and I am exactly right.
I highlighted that section as well.
It's good. I mean, the sensory details, like, that's why when the next thing I'll do is I'll ask you to give the book grades, for the story, syntax, and sexcapades. And I have to say, as far as the syntax goes, I mean, Sally Thorne's writing is fantastic. Like, that's, I think we can agree on that for sure, in that we loved The Hating Game enough to then go on and read the next book that came out. There's a reason they're making The Hating Game a movie. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily see this one as a movie.
Me neither.
At least not as it is. You know, it's like I've seen the Hallmark, renovation movie. I've seen the, like, friend's sister in love with the friend. It's... Yeah, I mean, it's nothing, there's nothing that necessarily I think would stand out enough to make it a movie, but the writing is really great.
Can I read another one of my, it's not a,
always.
It's not a sexcerpt, but it does kind of highlight Sally Thorne's more creative writing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can never decide if Tom's hair is the color of caramel fudge or chocolate. Either way, yum. The texture is like a romance novel that's fallen into the bath, then dried, vaguely sexual crinkle waves with the occasional curled edge and dog ear. I want to jam my hand in it and make a gentle fist.
Hell yes. I love that. Yeah, there were definitely a lot of good, like, one-liners and descriptions that I was like, oh, that's really funny.
Did you notice that Darcy often uses descriptors related to sugar?
Yeah.
Throughout the book.
Kind of goes with the fact that her character's addicted to sugar. Yeah. Yeah. Not enough about wine. She's obsessed with that too, but whatever. Yeah. So, okay, good. Yeah, overall, positive thoughts. It's, again, I think it's hard to measure up to The Hating Game if you've read that one first. I don't think if you have read The Hating Game, if you read this one next, I don't think you'll necessarily be disappointed. I would say, though, that maybe, like, expectations might not be met. Mm-hmm. That being said, I am more than happy to read anything else by Sally Thorne. Like, the more she pumps up, I am definitely going to check it out. So for our last little segment, I'll ask you to give 99% Mine a grade on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the very best that it could be, for story, syntax, and sexcapades. So let's start with story. Overall, 1 to 10, what do you think?
Story, I think I'd give it a 6.
Okay, yeah, that's good. This is one of my less generous ones. I did give it a 5. Mm-hmm. And I think we're kind of on the same page. I think that's where the book falters, really, is the story and kind of the choices the characters make and just sort of like the justifications for those choices. But yeah, out of the 3 grades, that would be my lowest one for sure, would be for the story. How about syntax?
Syntax, I do thoroughly enjoy Sally Thorne's writing, so I would give that a 9.
That's me too. Yeah, I gave it a 9 too. And it's, I mean, again, we're fans. We like it. You definitely feel like you could, like, be friends with people that, like, the characters in her books, both 99% Mine and The Hating Game. Like, they're fun. They really are. Okay, how about sexcapades? And this is an interesting one too, because I feel like it's because we don't have as much sex in this. But taking into account the sexual tension and, like, the payoff with that, so.
Which is something I look for in a romance
Oh, good.
novel.
Okay, you like the slow burn like I do.
Yes.
Yeah, okay,
so
great.
I would honestly give that a 9 as well.
Ooh, okay. I wasn't as high. I gave it a 7.
Okay.
Which I feel like, though, is still very generous considering that it's not one of those books where it's not like you're watching them in the bedroom. You know,
Right.
It's like you're not seeing the P and the V. Like it's, it's he was in me kind of thing.
Right.
I have to give her credit. And when I say her, I mean Darcy Barrett, that when she first tries to like get on that dick, she literally says the words to Tom, "Get in me."
Yeah. It scares him off a little bit.
And he's kind of like, what? Like, and they don't make it happen for another 100 pages after that. But I was like, I don't think I've ever read a character in a book who has used the words "get in me."
She knows
like,
what she wants.
Oh, it was so great. She's just like ripping at his belt, like, "Why aren't you touching me? Touch me now. Get in me." I was like, this is fantastic. Good for you. Girlfriend says what she wants. I will give her that. Any last thoughts on Sally Thorne or 99% Mine?
Last thoughts are pick it up, read it.
Yeah. So having read this one and The Hating Game, I mean, I think it's clear that you probably preferred The Hating Game.
Yes.
Okay. And are you...
Although I do think I prefer Tom. I don't know. Tom seems more of like the boy next door.
For sure.
Josh seems more like the unattainable man I can never get.
Again, this book is drenched in reality. Like, it's a lot of real people.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. So, and then obviously it seems like you'd be more than willing to read more Sally Thorne after
100%.
this. How about as far as romance goes? I mean, what's your hesitation with the dual narrative, like the dual perspective? Because I feel like that's not every romance, but it definitely is a good chunk of romance novels that are told from dual perspectives.
I've tried reading a few Christina Lauren dual perspectives, and I just have a hard time keeping track of things, to be honest.
Okay. So it's more of like logistics and not like I get annoyed keeping track of too many people sort of thing?
Yeah.
Or is that part of it?
I'm sure if it's done right,
Yeah.
I would enjoy it. I just haven't come across one that I feel like I want to read this until the end.
Well, that alone, though, that tells me you've read Sally Thorne and Christina Lauren. So it seems like it's safe to say you might be interested in reading more romance in the future.
Totally.
Yay! I'm glad to hear it. Well, good. We'll have to find some recommendations for you. Is there anything that you're looking for? Like, are you like, I really want to try this kind of romance? Or
I've never read any sort of fantasy romance.
Okay.
I don't know if it's my thing, but if you can recommend
You'd give it a
one
go.
based off of what you know from me in this podcast.
Absolutely.
Which one would you
Well, you know what? And I personally, fantasy meaning like do you want like princess, fairy,
maybe not fairy.
werewolves?
I could maybe get down for some werewolves.
Okay, so maybe like some paranormal, shifter.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay, great. Yeah, I've definitely got some, and people who listen to the podcast know that that's not one of my main genres. So anybody out there listening that's got some paranormal, shifter, vampire, werewolf, anything in the fantasy romance genre, holler at us for sure. But yeah, I love that you're willing to like try new things and scope out all the genre has to offer. That's all I'm looking for from people. That and maybe, holding your cover up loud and proud at the airport.
Oh yeah. You've convinced me. I will no longer hide my romance novel covers on public transportation.
Fabulous. You've heard it here. You're all ear witnesses.